Good morning, students, hospitality professionals, and leaders. I am Victoria Schaefer, HFTP Senior Membership Manager, along with Barbara Semerero, HFTP Chapter Relations Coordinator. Together with the Hackathon student leadership team and their professors, we welcome you to today's Hackathon session. HFTP is a proud sponsor of the first Hilton College Hackathon. The University of Houston, Conrad and Hilton College of Hotel and Restaurant Management, in partnership with HFTP, are starting a critical dialogue with a challenge to future leaders of this global industry. We invite student teams from hospitality programs around the world to compete in their first ever International Hilton College Hospitality Hackathon, HC3. HFTP, Hospitality, Financial, and Technology Professionals, is an educational association serving not only hospitality professionals, but allied partners who sell goods and services to the industry, young professionals developing their careers in hospitality, and students studying to become hospitality professionals. Student membership in HFTP is free. So if you're not yet a member of the association, I encourage you to join. Contact me and I can help you. Hospitality, Financial, and Technology Professionals was established in 1952. It's an international nonprofit association headquartered in Austin, Texas, with offices in Hong Kong, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Dubai. HFTP is recognized as the spokesgroup for the finance and technology segments of the hospitality industry, with members and stakeholders spanning across the globe. HFTP also offers 2 certifications widely recognized in the industry. You can elevate your professionalism and demonstrate superior industry performance in HFTP certification programs. We offer the CHAE. It is a Certified Hospitality Accountant Executive, and a CHTP, which is a Certified Hospitality Technology Professional. The exam is free for students on their first attempt with HFTP membership. And in 2018, HFTP acquired the copyright of the USALI, a logical step as the association has been connected to the resource since its origins as a sponsor and contributor. Currently, we are offering a USALI certificate program in its 11th edition. This course will demonstrate your expertise on the USALI. The objective for participants is to understand the history, use, and content of the USALI. Courses are available to all with no prior experience. So consider signing up to take this program. We're offering some specials right now. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few items about the platform and presentation today. Your microphone is muted at this time to avoid background noise. However, during question and answer time towards the end, you can unmute your microphone at the bottom left of the Zoom window or use the chat feature at the bottom to share your comments or questions. Today's Hangout is being recorded. Hangouts are educational discussions offered in a non-sales environment. Product promotion or sales pitches through the chat feature are not allowed. We will post the HFTP antitrust statement in the chat. Today's panel discussion will be about sales and marketing. It's led by our student leader, Alexis Jean-Jacques, and I now hand over the HFTP session to Alexis.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm going to get my PowerPoint up here. Can we all see that? Is that okay? Perfect. Okay. So, thank you, Victoria. All right, welcome everyone. As Victoria said, my name is Alexis Jean-Jacques, and I'm one of the volunteer student managers for the HC3 Hackathon. I want to thank you all again for joining our second webinar of the week. So if you guys were here yesterday with us, our first webinar was about digital presentations and how to, kind of visually capture the essence of your ideas. So today we'll be taking your ideas to the next step and teaching you guys how to sell and market yourselves along with your idea. So today, here to give us some insight are our 3 esteemed panelists. We have first co-founder of Whistle Messaging Inc., Jonathon Rojas. I don't know if you can see his little bubble down there, but he's right down there. We have senior account executive at Evention LLC, Christopher Contos. And we also have the executive producer of I'll Have What She's Cooking, Marisa Whitenton. So we're so happy to have you all here today. And I'm just going to give you all a little bit of background of everybody and give you guys a little to get to know them a little better. So first we have Jonathon. Jonathon is a co-founder of Whistle Messaging Inc., the leading guest messaging platform for hotels. Prior to co-founding Whistle, Jonathon began his career in corporate sales and consulting, where he spearheaded several projects for leading Fortune 500 companies. He later ventured into the trending tech startup scene in the newly forming Silicon Beach area of Los Angeles, where he had a hand in expanding market shares and raising next-level capital to propel growth of a few early-stage SAS startup companies. After his stint in Silicon Beach, Jonathon teamed up with his co-founder, whom he met during his college years at Loyola Marymount University, and Whistle was born. Jonathon is actively involved in the hospitality tech scene and is a member of our sponsor, HFTP's Young Professionals Advisory Council. Thank you, Jonathon, for joining us today. All right. And next up, we have Chris. Chris Contos is a hospitality tech account executive out of Brooklyn, New York. He has been supervising account management, new business development, and client success roles for Evention LLC for the last 4.5 years. Outside of his position, Chris is an MBA student at the University of Illinois and also participates in HFTP's Young Professionals Advisory Council with the Chicago chapter. Chris manages his work-life balance via a work-from-home setup that allows him to prioritize his job, school, and leadership roles, as well as traveling and other hobbies efficiently. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. And last, but certainly not least, we have Marisa. Marisa Whitenton began her career with an internship at Marriott and eventually worked for Hilton and private boutique hotels while in college. From hotels, she moved into restaurants and venues, moving from maitre d' roles into events, managing everything from small diners, seating 10, to full-scale productions for over 1,000 guests. She served as event manager for the James Beard Award-winning restaurant Uchi, and most recently, she served as director of event sales at Agricole Hospitality in Houston. She currently serves as executive producer of I'll Have What She's Cooking, an online live cooking series featuring chefs and restaurant innovators from around the country. She spent 3 years at the University of Houston and is a graduate of the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. Thanks for joining us, Marisa. So now we're just going to jump into our questions that we have for them because they're so impressively qualified. So our first one, actually, I wanted to bring up Jonathon, just kind of put you on the hot seat because we did talk earlier before, and I know that you've actually been in a few pitch competitions similar to this one, and you've in fact won one or two. So I was wondering if you could help us and answer, what would you say was your best strategy in selling yourself and your pitch, and what really took it home for you to win first place?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Alexis. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on this call as well. As you said, I have won a few pitch competitions in my day. So, to go back into my memory bank and think about those, obviously they're very nerve-wracking at the time, especially if you're pitching in front of an audience. For you guys, that are here listening today, I know you guys kind of have a virtual audience that you're kind of creating videos for and pitching in front of, which is maybe not as much nerve-wracking, but still definitely nerve-wracking nonetheless when you're actually creating that video to send over. I would say probably the best piece of advice is going to be repetition and practice. I know going into it, my co-founder and I and all of our pitch competitions, we really tried to practice and also your knowledge in the matter of what you're pitching, right? So to really know exactly what you're pitching, just in case in these high pressure situations you forget what you actually want to say, but having so much knowledge in what you're pitching, you can easily venture off and kind of make up for what you may have missed, or if you're following a certain structure, you're able to easily recuperate from that if you do get nervous and miss a few things. But again, practice and repetition in your pitch is going to be really, really important. Also, being able to avoid words like like, utilizing those type of words in your pitches will kind of add some detriment to your pitches. So just, again, practice and repetition will help you kind of weed those out of your pitch. Also, try not to get nervous and data dump. I know a lot of people do that in their pitches as well. So, and by data dump, I mean just, going off in a tangent and a rant and explaining a little too much and going too fast. Take a breath, relax, and really go through your pitch exactly like you practiced, and try not to, I know you guys have some limited time in some of your pitches that you're going to have. Every pitch you go to is going to be 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it may be. But again, practicing yourself, spacing out what you want to get across, what the content you want to get across in your message and your pitch, and being able to deliver that in a timely manner, I would say probably is another big piece of advice that really helped us in our pitch competitions, as well as making sure your message is clear. Making sure the audience understands exactly what you're pitching. So if it's a product, making sure that they understand the product in a short, concise, simple way, as well as if you're addressing a solution, make sure you're addressing the problem to the problem, and outlining the clear problem that you have and how your solution is going to fix that problem in the industry or whatever it may be at that fact. So I would say those are probably my biggest pieces of advice.
Great, thank you so much, Jonathan. I don't know if Chris or Marissa, if you've ever had some similar successes that you might want to share off of that, like maybe pitch competitions, or I know, Marissa, you have your little web series. Did you guys want to add anything to that?
Marissa, do you want to start?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything that he said. I mean, I think being able, first and foremost, identifying who you're talking to, and being really aware of what their needs are, and having hopefully listened to what they've asked for you to come and present them, and just being really specific and approachable with what you're bringing to the table, would be something. So at least from the show standpoint, I mean, you want to make sure that you're not coming in too advanced for some people and too simple for others. So you just want to make sure that anybody walking by would understand exactly what you're trying to sell them, and leaves almost no questions at the end. You've answered everything you've tried to bring.
Yeah, to follow off that point, invite people, your friends, family, if they're not doing anything, and practice the pitch in front of them. So maybe it's your sibling, maybe it's your family member. This is what we did for one of our competitions. We took some, when I was at Hyatt, we took a few of our friends and just did the presentation for them for a competition we were doing. And yeah, within that 5-minute presentation we had to do for our allotted time, do you understand what we're trying to solve? Do you understand what we're trying to provide for this competition? And I think friends, family can really give you a good straight, good straight direction to head towards that, whether they get it or not.
Perfect, thank you so much, guys. All right, so jumping into our next question that we had, what are things to avoid in your speech when presenting your ideas? I know Jonathan touched up a little bit on the ums and things like that, but can you guys give a little more advice on that?
Yeah, Jonathan kind of talked about partially the trailing off portion, a data dump or a rant. So I'm confident with the product that I sell every day at Evention, but I can still get myself caught up in the excitement of what I'm about to tell you. You're listening to this for the first time, but for me, this is my 400th demo. But I'll get excited to talk more about it very quickly. And my cadence, the big thing there is the cadence will go a little awry. I'll get the beats per minute will go a little bit faster, and you might miss a key point because of the speed that I'm talking at. So one of those things that I like to do is record myself. So catch those moments, whether it's the portion that you have during the presentation, you're going to speak for 45 seconds. Within those 45 seconds, just hit record on your phone and just be able to hear yourself back. So where you said where you said like, where you had an awkward pause or a bit of your phrasing, you can change a few of the words. I think those are some things that you can really help, smooth over an efficient presentation for your portion.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And another thing you could even try is like in Toastmasters, they used to do things where you could have someone watch you And every time you said things like or you would lose points on it. Also speaking clearly and projecting, especially because you're doing something digitally. Don't assume that just because you have a mic, it's going to necessarily make you louder. All it's going to do is amplify your whisper. If you're already a very soft-spoken person, it's not yelling and it's not screaming. It's really speaking from your diaphragm, like your choir and theater arts teachers used to tell you. It's about speaking up and out. And remember, if you are doing something digitally, by the time your voice leaves your mouth, hits your mic, it's traveling. I mean, it's traveling really fast, but it's going across connections. Obviously, things are coming from all over the world. So sometimes by the time it hits your receiver, your listener, your audience member, if you're mumbling or you're already really quiet, it's even harder to hear over the internet. So it's even more important to speak up and out, and to speak very slowly. Don't speak too fast. It's easy to do when you're nervous, but it's really important to slow down, make sure you're enunciating, and what you're trying to come across is really clear as possible.
Yeah, to kind of bounce off what Chris and Marisa have said, those are exactly a lot of the same things that advice that I would give as well. Also, making sure you guys aren't speaking in a monotone voice. Touching back on what Chris said, you know, we do pitches and we've done this thousands of times, so sometimes it's hard for us to stay enthusiastic, maybe about the same exact pitch. So, you know, just making sure that you are keeping that level of enthusiasm when you're talking to someone or when you are presenting, you know, especially if you guys practice this pitch 100 times, just make sure that 100th time it still has that same enthusiasm that you had the first time doing it, but, you know, fixing those little parts of along the way that you had issues with. So just making sure you do that, speaking clearly, like Marisa said, enunciating, just making sure you can be heard and getting your message across clearly.
All right, perfect. Thanks, guys. All right, so the next question that we have is, when pitching an idea, how can someone address the problem their solution is trying to solve quickly while still being persuasive? Because I know with our pitches, we had 90 seconds to do it. This time we have 3 minutes to do it. But, you know, for example, you guys have huge conferences and webinars. You can talk about it for an hour. But our contestants only have 3 minutes. So how can they really get that across quickly and be persuasive at the same time?
So 3 minutes is either going to be the longest amount of time you could ever spend, or it'll be the fastest amount of time. If you have nothing to say, 3 minutes will feel like 3.5 hours. If you have a lot of information to give, 3 minutes will go by really quickly. So you want to make sure that what you're presenting is very much to the point, without losing any type of excitability or, you know, fun aspect to it. You don't want it to be too serious, but you do want to make sure that you're not you know, mincing words or, you know, have extraneous information. Essentially, this is, in this particular case, this is the ultimate elevator pitch. You know, if you want to be very clear with what you're trying to sell me. If you're trying to sell me a car, perfect. I know that now. Convince me why I should buy it. Really use that time to your advantage.
So to kind of bounce off what Marisa said, one of the things I would do is create like an outline in your presentation before you actually give the presentation. I usually make sure that I have an introduction, right? The introduction is going to introduce the solution first before going into the problem. So high level introduction, right? So people know exactly what you're going to talk about. Make sure that's clear and concise so people understand what your solution actually is without going into too much detail. Next step of your outline will probably be addressing the problem, right? And then going into how your solution fixes the problem that we're facing, right? So keeping that in your pitch and your presentation, in your outline, and keeping those in mind, as long as you hit those 3 touch points, you should be great and people should understand exactly what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, you guys both summarized it really well. Yeah, these 3 minutes are an elevator pitch, but you also have a little bit more time in the lobby to talk to that person about it. So you've been in the elevator, you've gone down to the lobby now, and you have till that exit door to talk for the next, you know, that's kind of how I would create the analogy for it. The first 30 seconds, I think, is where I find it really critical, where I start to address the problem and, you know, get the, you know, all right, in a client setup, I do kind of know what the situation is that I'm here to fix. But for this sort of portion, yeah, getting into your solution, like Jonathon said, I should know the executive overview of all of this, the summary of it in the first 30 seconds to 45 seconds. I should be, excited to learn more about it, and, ready for the next slide or the next portion of your video, your presentation. So those first 30 seconds are your hook, in terms of, the real excitement with it.
All right, great information, guys. Thanks. So our next topic is, how can you keep from alienating other industries who could potentially use your product in your presentation? So I know us in the hospitality industry, we have restaurants, country clubs, golf clubs, all of that good stuff. So how can we kind of make sure that we don't single out only restaurants or something, and make sure that everybody can decide like, oh, I could actually use that as well?
I would start with being cautious of hospitality jargon or the overuse of business acronyms that are specific to one industry. If you are, obviously when we think hospitality, I think our minds go to hotels and restaurants kind of first and foremost, and then clubs. But I mean, there's so many ideas out there that you could, especially in the age of COVID, where you could take them into things like boutique fitness and airlines, which are also service industry businesses. They're just not necessarily the traditional first thing that comes to mind when you say hospitality. So I think overuse of revenue management terms and hotel terms, unless you're actually pitching something that's only for a hotel or something that is directed specifically at a hotel executive who's sitting in front of you, I think it's important to kind of show a little bit of fluidity in how something can be used, so that if someone from a different industry walks by, they could, they get that little light bulb moment and go, hey, I feel like there's got to be a way that this would translate. I'm already kind of seeing it.
Yeah, I think Marisa, you said it really well. Also, again, this is going to kind of go back to knowing your audience, right? Making sure that, because I know definitely, this is an interesting question and can be difficult at times, because if you have a specific audience that is, only hotel professionals, you don't want to necessarily, give a product pitch that would include other industries, because it could take up your time from really getting to the problem and solution in your own product. So just, again, making sure that you know your audience and what the prompt is and what points you need to tackle in order to do well.
And including key details in the presentation, maybe not verbally, but just in regards to the PowerPoint or the way that you are presenting it, including the sectors. Our company kind of works with a little bit into the retail industry in the last few years. So we do include some partial, information there that does aid, I think, in terms of our, presentations for hotels, seeing in the market that we're working with. So in the similar vein, if this is something that's going to transcend something to restaurants, to a hotel, to a casino, whether it's just verbally writing it into the presentation, you're able to at least include it there, and the viewer can see that you do that. So I think that might help as well. So you don't have to bog down to list out every hospitality segment that you're trying to solve the problem for.
Great. All good information. All right, and this next one is probably going to be the most applicable to everybody right now, because we're all trying to compete against each other, right? So what am I bringing to the buyer's experience that would make them choose me over a similar product? Anybody can chime in there.
So I'll kind of go first, at least with my experience in the industry. So, we are in the hospitality industry, so we are in a people business, right? Customer service, relationships, building rapport is really important from a sales perspective. And it's really important to build a relationship with the person you're selling to, kind of an icebreaker, initially in those kind of first 30 seconds when you're speaking to them, first minute. I feel like a lot of times that's a key differentiator between our sales pitches and our competitors, because I feel like our competitors sometimes have, hired someone new, or maybe they have a large sales team and they really just have an outline that they're going through and trying to hit certain points to get across. And it's really just going over the product, right, is what they're doing. But they're not really listening to the customer's needs. They're not really, talking to that customer, building relationships. I deal with hotels, all shapes and sizes. Recently, we've dealt with a lot of more smaller and independent boutique hotels. So this is also going to go back to knowing your audience, right? So now when I'm speaking to these kind of smaller independents, which I'm more often than not, I'm speaking to an owner. It's making sure that I'm listening to their needs and addressing their needs in my presentation and my pitch, as well as building a relationship with them throughout this, right? Because I'm going to leave that memorable experience with them, or that lasting thought, because they were like, hey, you know, Jonathon was really nice, well spoken. You know, we may have connected over something, right, in hospitality industry, or I found some type of point to connect with them on, whatever it may be, right? There's tons of different ways to do that, but definitely trying to do that so you stand out over your competitors would give you a great advantage.
Yeah, those are really good points, Jonathan. Yeah, like you just said, like a competitor may have a larger sales team or somebody new, so they'll have their points they want to hit within the product. Here's how this will help you. Here's how this will help you. But they're not really listening to that person they're presenting to. And listening is really important. I think if you take anything from this out into your career, listening in the sales role is really important. On, you know, working with an owner in a boutique space, someone within the experience of 10, 20 years with Hyatt or Marriott or Hilton, who have those, you know, SOPs they have to do, and how your software or how your solution can meet those. There's such a spectrum of that, and listening really enables you. And I think that, you know, as Jonathan said, that relationship gets built because you're able to listen and understand with where you might provide something that'll help, as well as I'm someone that brings their personality into the sales experience, whether it's bringing in mutual interests that we have with me and that contact that I'm working with, things that are going on at the hotel. I'm always excited to learn about what's going on at the property, what's going on at the restaurant, carrying a little bit about that hospitality passion that I have into the sales experience too. I think that's one of those differentiators. You're not just getting a software from me, you're getting a part of me into this as well. That kind of fosters the growth once you've added it, and go on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it's always going to be the experience that I bring to the table. The salesperson is going to be the first part of any relationship between a customer and a company. I'm the person that you're going to talk to first. I'm probably the person you're going to deal with in the long run. And it's, you know, you're representing an entire company on your shoulders, essentially. So you have to think about what makes you loyal to different brands, what makes you feel good when you buy something, and really translate that into how you approach people. Everybody buys different things. Some people like to be pushed in one direction, some people don't. Listening is incredibly important. Aligning, the old school sales term aligning, where, you know, you really figure out what the customer wants, but also how you approach them, how you talk to them. For some people, it's really easy. We do it naturally. For some people, it's not. You know, the way you talk to your friends is going to be very different than the way you talk to maybe your grandma, where you're, you know, a little bit quieter and your voice comes down. You talk a little slower. When you're with your friends, your, you know, voice might come up a little bit. But there's a reason that you go back to the same car dealership every time, and it may not be because you have a thing for Hondas. It might just be because, and there's a million Honda dealerships. Why do I keep going back to this one every time I need a new car? You know, there's restaurants that I go to where the food's kind of not so great, but the experience there is awesome. And I've been to places that are vice versa, where service is isn't so great, but the food's awesome. And does one balance out the other? And so I think that's something that, you know, in a very competitive market where you have competitors that maybe are doing the exact same thing as you, there's a million steakhouses out there, you know, and they're all selling the same thing. What makes someone want to come eat at mine? And I think it all comes down to how comfortable are you easy to work with? Are you someone that I kind of identify with as an individual? And I think that those things are really important in the buying experience.
Great.
I was going to say, lastly, one of the things is we're kind of talking about the repetitions that you would take through your presentation. It's also carrying the confidence that what you're providing is something that you've put your heart into, or you can at least show on, a webinar that we're meeting today, or during a presentation in person at a property or a hotel or restaurant. You can see the, sort of the passion that you have for it. I think that really sets the tone versus somebody just, hey, I'm from a bigger company, or hey, I'm from an exciting startup, but doesn't really show that, it's hard to describe. But when you see somebody that can passionately talk about something confidently, as well as, like we said, like can field different types of questions and spectrums that, you know, people need. I think you'll, in your experience in hospitality, you'll come across some of that more and more.
Great, thanks, Chris. All right, and then we've got this one, which is great because it kind of was a little specific to what we're doing now, you know, with the topic of the COVID. But is there long-term potential with this hack even after the COVID era ends? And how can I show long-term use and brand evolution, even its beginning stages? Marissa, I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on this, since this was a really good point that you brought up, you know, not only, you know, in general, how do I show long-term use, but, you know, now during this COVID time.
Sure. I mean, when you're coming up with an idea, I mean, it's always important to think, you know, what could it look like in the long term, but also being willing and, you know, humble enough and, you know, fluid enough to know that it might evolve differently. And I think there's a lot of ways to evolve an idea or a brand while also keeping integrity to what it was originally meant to do. Obviously, the COVID era, so to speak, is going to end at some point, but, you know, do you have an idea that could potentially last for a long time, even if it just has to shift or pivot a little bit, that your buyer, that's going to entice your buyer to want to keep it? You know, this isn't just something they're dumping a lot of money into right this second. This is actually something that could benefit them in the long term. First off, I would say never assume that just because you came up with the idea for something that you're the best. People are going to, if you have a really great idea, even if you invent, you know, something very novel, all that's going to happen is it's going to create competition. There's going to be someone that comes in behind you and is going to take your idea and they're going to grow it exponentially. So you have to be willing to stay ahead of that, or also be willing to evolve with it and what the market wants. And then look at what you're presenting. Is it something that is it an idea that's one-fold? It's not just about getting someone into a hotel. You know, the room night really isn't that much of a revenue stream. How does this idea go into, is it going to bring revenue to my golf course, to my spa, to my gyms, to my restaurants? Like, how is it going to fill all of my revenue centers and outlets? And you can take that into really any, you know, industry, any, you know, wherever you're trying to take your idea, I guess what I'm trying to say. But I think that would be one of the most important parts, is that it's not limited to just right now, right here.
Yeah, to kind of go off of you know, what Marissa said as well. You know, obviously, given the COVID era and the environment, a lot of people are making some changes or reevaluating their technology to implement new contactless, is the trending word, is what we see right now, right? Procedures, but being able to show how, you know, this will provide ROI even after the COVID era. Right. So just continuing on. And I think, from, you know, my personal opinion, I don't think COVID necessarily, I think it just expedited how quickly hospitality is adapting to technology, because I felt like this was coming already, right? Being able to introduce new contactless technologies, whether it's like digital keys or contactless communication, contactless check-in. These are things that were already around pre-COVID. It just kind of really woke up the industry to, like, hey, we need to implement these things sooner rather than later. So I think a lot of the ideas and a lot of the products that are out there today will definitely have long-term impact. But again, it's just being able to identify and show the ROI on, you know, what your product is going to have for that property or hotel or restaurant in the long term.
Yeah, automation, that's where we're headed. And that is, yeah, the wake up call for hospitality to pick up at the pace behind other industries. You know, typically it's an interaction type based industry, but now technology is going to be used even more so. The example I found was really interesting was a tech company out in New York had always done reservations. They've always been a reservation system company. You know, you go to a restaurant in Manhattan, you know, they'll add you to the list, and, you know, in 45 minutes, you'll get a text. So what they've done is they've actually pivoted during COVID to do actually a wait list now within the mobile app of a hotel group. So as you are at the hotel now experiencing, you know, at a resort within this brand, you can now interact basically with the wait list to see within the outlets, is it busy? Can I get a table this evening? You're able to kind of interact with the hotel now in a really brand new way where we're all on our phones. We all have this access, it's just, these are just enabling tools that are helping the hotel out. So I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see people that have established certain types of solutions and now are expanding upon them in COVID. And then afterwards, yeah, some of these are going to become industry norms. But it's been exciting to see.
All right, guys, all good points. Thank you. And we've got another one here. So the importance of identifying risks your potential buyer may see in purchasing your product and how to address them up front. So I guess this is more of like a tip than a question, but it is something that's definitely going to come up for everybody.
I feel like it's really important to answer as many questions on the front end as possible. Think about every single question someone could possibly ask you. And that sometimes means going really deep into it. That's something on the show we think about a lot when we're writing things out is, if I'm using this type of oil, why? Because someone's going to ask that. And you have to think about that constantly. Every little detail you should have an answer for, even if it's just in the back of your head, even if it never comes up, you'll be really happy it did the first time. And so that goes into risks. You're part of, we talked about listening being a really important part of the sales process. And it'll really help you identify, even just if you just get a hunch of what's keeping somebody, from buying with you. You want to make sure that you can kind of eliminate any issues that would be plaguing them right off the bat, if possible. And always listen to what's unsaid. Listen to that tone in their voice. Listen to how their facial expression changes or kind of what their energy is like, because that'll also help you know how to steer the conversation away from another potential risk or towards your goal.
Yeah, definitely. Marisa touched on some really good points there. I've always kind of thought of being in a sales role and position also kind of as being a psychologist almost, right? You're listening to your customer, you're evaluating their situation, you're asking questions to learn more about their problems. So again, really just kind of sitting back, listening to them, trying to address the problems that they have with the solution that you're providing, and make them feel at ease in the sense that they are making the right decision in purchasing, show them the long-term value. Again, right, everyone's going to look at, what's my ROI, on this specific product that I'm purchasing in order to keep that product in the long term. So being able to identify that, and again, going back to what Chris and Marisa said, listening to them and touching on those points that you heard them speak about, is going to be really, really important for your sales, your sales pitch.
Addressing, any type of question, as Marisa said, buyer's remorse is a really tough thing to get through. As a salesperson, you've presented, all these topics to them within the solution that it covers, and there was one or two that were not addressed. You may have okay, we'll proceed with that, but then they discover it or they don't understand it, and now the wheels in motion have already started, and here we are trying to solve this later. Being able to answer those types of questions are really important. So as you kind of review, I think Nettie, you made a really good point here. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly, but yeah, within the first 30 days of an implementation, how will this work? Those type of hard-hitting questions when someone says, how will this work for cheap? How will this work for, we don't have X amount of dollars to spend? That type of question. I think that's a, fastball down the middle that you can take out of the park with your guys' response. Practice basically saying, with an affordable investment by a hotel or a restaurant or a casino, this is how our solution can do it. I think that'll really help, as well as practice that. That's a confident response that you guys could have that could, take you guys somewhere in regards to that presentation.
Great, thanks guys, all good tips. And then we've got one last one. I wanted to put Marisa a little bit in the hot seat as well. So Marisa, you're currently the executive producer of the online live cooking series, I'll Have What She's Cooking. And I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes work getting into, getting customers to buy into the show, the personalities of the chefs, like you were saying, watching them perform, and plenty of great information from the innovative restaurateurs. So could you share a little bit of what goes on into about how you folks are able to promote and produce such a successful web series, and kind of give some tips? Because I mean, also everybody is almost kind of like producing their own series for this competition, but you have a little bit of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about details. It's all about organization. We spent a lot of time going over what we want to cover and, make on the show. We're really, we want there to be value in it. We want to have, we want to know if someone buys, they know exactly what they're going to make. And we want to figure out how we're going to get them to there. So we listen to what the audience wants to learn. We take a lot of feedback. We also have to think about what's feasible for them. People are cooking this at home, so we want to make sure that it's something that is attainable for all skill levels, but also it's something they can do with minimal kitchen equipment. Also, you need to know when to cut corners. There are times that we send, items in their meal kits ahead of time. And I guess I should probably explain, it's sort of, the setup of it is almost like if you're familiar with Blue Apron meets an online, like a online or a cooking class. So they get all of their ingredients delivered to them, and then they can buy them if you don't live in Houston, and then we cook live. So, we've only got, maybe 2 hours. Anything longer than that's going to be way too long, and you're going to start to lose interest. So you have to know when, again, there's information people don't just need to know. Is there, is them making this very simple sauce, is it adding value to the kit, or is it just, taking time away from bigger stuff? You've got audience levels that are, have different skills. So you have to simplify it in a way that, people who don't even know how to turn their oven on can figure it out. And you also have people who are a little bit more advanced that can, take away something from it as well. We spend a lot of time writing the show out. It's not scripted, but you always need to run a show. Any presentation you do, I highly encourage you writing out just even the order that you want to take things in, but also with the ability to kind of pivot back and forth, because obviously you're going in real time. So people will ask you questions. There will be hiccups here and there. So you have to be able to move seamlessly. And we're also dealing with chefs and, bar managers and people who have different personality types. Some people are absolute hams and can get up there and entertain everybody for 2 hours. And some people are really, really quiet and require a lot of support. And you have to be, using your time effectively. If I put a pot of water to boil on the stove, am I going to stand there and watch it? Am I, can I be using that 5 minutes it takes for it to boil to do something else for the class? And if not, what am I going to do at that time? I need to be talking. I need to be filling those gaps. And that's where you also learn that everything is really, really intentional, which is something I said earlier. If you watch any cooking show on, television, those people are 99% personalities. They're not necessarily chefs, but there's a reason they do really well to the audience, because they're engaging, they're relatable, they're, you want to learn from them. They're not necessarily just boring. They're also very intentional with how they do things. So, when they pick up a spoon, they say it out loud. And again, you always have those details in the back of your head. I don't just pick up this, cup of oil. I need to tell them it's olive oil, or I need to tell them I'm using, avocado oil, and then be prepared to that someone's going to either ask me that why it's avocado oil, or I just, say the sentence, so we're going to use avocado oil because. And so it's those kind of details that really make it seamless and educational at the same time. It's a lot of patience, a lot of practice. We rehearse a lot. It's live. There are a lot of mistakes that get made, and you can always tell the difference between a show that was really well rehearsed and one that wasn't. But it's just because you need to be able to move through your presentation really easily, and get enough practice and muscle memory in there that you know exactly what comes next. But there's a million ways, cheat sheets, putting things up on the wall or on your computer, even just to remind yourself to look directly into the camera, because the thing about taped or even live digital content is that you're not in front of people. And for some people, that's really great because they're really shy in front of an audience. But for someone like me, I would prefer to be in front of live people because I can feed off their energy a little bit easier. So yeah, I don't know if that answered everything. As far as how we promoted it, I mean, that's a great time to use your network. You know, obviously social media is a huge thing in this day and age, but you can't specifically rely on it. Different social media platforms work really well for different things. Also, you need to identify what your target markets are. And if you're just trying to get any and everyone, then you have to be willing to cast a wide net. If you're going for really specific groups of people, then, you know, you need to really hone in on where you think that they're going to be getting their information.
All right, great. Thanks, Marisa. That was all awesome information. So before we wrap it up for, you know, Q&A, did you guys, Chris or Jonathan, have anything you want to add? Just throw in there last minute.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good as well. I didn't create a really cool web series.
No problem. Information. Thank you so much. So now I just wanted to open up the floor for a little bit of Q&A. So please go ahead and feel free to use the chat, and I can just read it out for you. Or if you want to, if you guys can see that participants option at the bottom, there is a raise hand if you guys are willing to, you know, read it out loud yourself or ask yourself. So I'll kind of keep a lookout for any raising hands if you guys want to verbally ask your own question. But yeah, so far I've got in the comments a question from Yvonne. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But what is your preferred editing software? I'm assuming for your pitches. If you guys wanted to chime in on that one.
Editing for like video editing, like what kind of editing software?
Yeah, maybe if you can clarify, Yvonne. Yeah, video editing. Okay.
I don't have a lot of, well, we use a video, like ours are all live, so we don't really edit them. And then I have a videographer that does most of that, so I can't. What happened? Sorry.
Yeah, same here. I mean, we don't really edit our own videos. We usually send them out to like a marketing agency or someone to create the content for us. So I personally don't have amazing experience with video editing software.
Yeah. Well, I was asking because in this competition we have to send a 3-minute video. I was just wondering.
Ah, gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yvonne, and then actually we do have, eventually we will upload the webinar series from yesterday, and Art, who was talking about digital presentations, had a lot of good information on that stuff. So hopefully we can get that to you and get it uploaded, and you can even actually you can contact Art. I'm sure he'd be more than willing to talk to you as well. But yeah, he had a lot of good information on that as well. Oh, there. Arlene said that it will be up today. So you can take a look at that from the webinar yesterday.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to send in a question to our selling gurus?
I'll just ask it instead of typing. It takes too long. Yesterday in one of the attendees asked about how to get energy into the presentation. You've touched on that a little bit, but in a video presentation, what would you suggest to stay after 50 times you're re-recording it? Which I don't know that you should do that today because you can edit, right? So, but how do you keep that energy level up? What are some recommendations? Do you go watch a funny video? Do you drink a Red Bull? What do you do to get that energy so it comes across on the video?
I mean, for what we've told chefs and even for myself when I present, I mean, there's just, I mean, even just old techniques like smiling when you talk. It's really hard to sound, I mean, you can still sound really quiet, but you sound a little bit more energetic when you smile. And just practicing raising your voice, or, you know, projecting and raising your voice a little bit. there's so many tricks out there. You could probably even Google just like how actors even warm up a little bit, because there's so many different techniques into just, you know, getting your nerves out and, you know, being able to speak clearly. You know, we talked about practicing would be a really big one, just making sure you're confident, but don't practice so much that you make yourself nervous. You could even probably pull in some, you know, roommates or family and, you know, play some old improv games or something just to kind of practice pivoting from, you know, one thought to another and trying to be creative on the fly. And then just, I don't know, just be so excited about what you have to sell. Like if that doesn't energize you, then you need to figure out why that is. You should, when someone's pitching something to me, I want to like convince me this is the greatest idea I've even ever heard, even if it's the worst idea of all time. We've all walked away and wonder, you know, why did I just spend $20 on this bottle of water? I didn't need $20 bottle of water. I mean, but the guy was so excited. How could I not buy it from him? You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff it's really tangible, and it's so important when you're doing something in a digital online space, because they can't feed off your energy. So it's even more important that you're so excited and descriptive that you can taste it and they're going to want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that same excitement. Arlene, I have coffee, so that usually gets the wheels turning. But again, it's that, you know, it's that excitement in the product. You have to have that to get this across the finish line, to also get them in the mood, you know, them excited about it too. You know, have that energy, kind of like when, you know, friends come to a party, you're excited to see some, you know, your friends, you're excited to see family, you know, have that excitement in that, you know, not too excited, but, you know, have that type of energy level where you can carry that through across the 3 minutes. You know, listen to each other as you're talking. Somebody that, you know, may have a more quieter tone than the other, you know where important parts might be felt, you know, understood better maybe by somebody else's pronunciation of it, or the way they say, you know, certain key things about your solution. You know, definitely listen to each other in that presentation, so you guys obviously know where to dictate certain things.
Yep, I don't really have too much to add. Enthusiasm is really important. Excitement, both of those are you know, you guys have a little advantage where you can actually record yourself, delete it, and, you know, re-upload another one. So like Chris said, having someone listen to that and give you some feedback on your presentation, listening it to yourself, you know, seeing what faults you have in that presentation, and then just getting the right one for your video.
Great, all good info. So we have 2 more questions here we can squeeze in before we have to get out of here. So Needy asked, how important is the price versus the product quality?
If your presentation covers ROI points or has something that hits really well, I think when it comes to price, you know, it's ROI that really speaks to a lot of people. So I understand, you know, this is inexpensive. This is something that can be done in 30 days. Those are things, you know, you have to keep in mind. But price, you know, if the ROI presents that product quality there, this can do this, and it'll save, or it'll allow access to this, you know, being able to kind of cross that bridge. You know, it can be a $10 product, it can be a $1,000 product. I think, you know, if you know the audience and how you're describing it, as well as, you know where this the return potential can be, you know, I think the two go kind of hand in hand. But the ROI is, I think, the biggest point. That really ties a lot into my work.
Yep, I agree with Chris. ROI is really important. You know, quality of the product is also really important. Showcasing, you know, that your product really fills the needs of the customers, addresses their problems, and actually solves them is really important. And if you do that, you know, price, it doesn't matter too much to the customer. Obviously, you do have some customers that are really, really price conscious, especially right now, given the pandemic. You know, budgets are smaller. The revenues are a little bit are smaller and impacted. So a lot of customers are going to be price conscious right now. But again, showcasing the return on investment on your product will help them make that decision and bring them over the top.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say perceived value is everything. You know, what someone, again, this kind of goes back to what I said, where, you know, even if you think you have the greatest idea of all time, you can't assume you're the best and that people are going to pay for it. They want to feel like they're getting value out of it. People love to buy things, but they don't want to ever feel like they got taken advantage of. So if, if for whatever reason your product is more expensive than the next guy's, there needs to be perceived value, because competition, why is this skin cream better than another?
Perfect. And then this is a great question because Ms. Charmaine brought this up. So this is a global competition. What is innovative and creative in one country may be commonplace in another? Can the panel suggest to students how to position their pitch so it adds context to the impact it can make for its primary purpose and for its use in other sectors? We want to just answer that really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to go down to, what you guys select is your product. Like you said, it could be innovative in one country and it could be the norm in another country. So, I mean, just really taking a look at the industry and making sure what you're suggesting and what you're creating will provide some value, and being able to show value in, multiple countries or different contexts, like you said, right? So a lot of that's just going to be research on your guys' end, right? And really putting in the proper content into your presentation in order to address the issues that you're trying to solve. But I think in your competition, a lot of the same issues exist across multiple countries. So I definitely think you guys can find a lot of solutions that every country is struggling with.
Or kind of similar to the topic earlier about alienating a part of the hospitality industry. No, you're not alienating the European market, because they already have this solution, or they already have the thing that you're presenting that you may feel might be best suited for North America. Whether that's listed in the presentation or that's, you guys verbally say this can be enhanced in Europe, this may be a better solution actually in North America, but we can still take this into Europe. This is something that's actually not been shared before in Asia or the Middle Eastern region. You can kind of talk about where specifically maybe this exists already, and where your product solution inexpensive can be done to sort of enhance it. Oh, and hey, in 30 days, this can actually do something really well in Europe versus, Houston, Texas, or New York City. You guys can kind of, showing that depth of like the global, the global side of it would be really cool, actually. Showing that, what about other regions, I think that'll impress judges.
Yeah, I would have said the exact evolution, knowing how to evolve your idea to meet whoever it is, and whether it's a country or an industry or a person.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to addressing the problem, right? So if it's a specific problem you're trying to solve in a specific country, it's addressing that, like Chris said.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to squeeze in one more question, because this sounds like a great one for the students. If we use a chart on screen that includes wording, do you recommend speaking about all parts of the chart so the viewer can follow along, or just the important factors?
For me, I would just touch on the importance of the chart. I think reading off of your presentation is never a good idea. It's always there just as a visual aid, right? So really addressing why the chart's important and why it's there. And that's pretty much it on that end.
As long as the chart clearly shows, not a data dump. We don't need to look at an extensive chart within your 3 minutes. You really just want to make sure that, what you're showing is very concise. We can all understand it very quickly. You can talk through, I would say, just a little bit of the important detail. You want to highlight, as you point to it, this, blank is the majority. This is, a cost. This is something we're going to remove because it presents X problems. You can show that and then say it, and then, move on to the next slide. Visually, I think the viewer is going to get it, what that is that you're trying to share with us. But a bar graph or an extensive listing of different statistics, can take the presentation in a little bit of a direction that slows it down, and would, definitely would take away from your 3 minutes that you're trying to share as much as possible. But again, the viewer only has a few moments to really grasp that graph, and then you're going to be moving on. So just make sure it's pretty concise, and in 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I can get it, or somebody can, understand what you're sharing.
Yeah, and I would just like to make sure it's legible, that it's big enough that I can read it, that even if you don't even have to say that much about it. I mean, don't waste 10 or 15, 20 valuable seconds on what is essentially just data that may not be adding too much to what you're trying to do.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, guys. So that's gonna wrap up this webinar pretty much. So on behalf of the HC3 Planning Committee, we wanted to thank Marisa, Chris, and Jonathan for taking the time to be here with us today. I know you guys are in a couple different time zones, so we really, truly appreciate it. We also want to thank HFTP for hosting the webinar series as part of the HFTP Hangouts. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you guys, the viewers who are watching and joined us during the second webinar during Hackathon week. I just wanted to give out a few reminders for everybody. Please don't forget that your final hack submissions are due August 6th, 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and 12 a.m. technically August 7th GMT, if that's your time zone. So please, please, please don't forget that. If you are late to the submission, we will not be accepting your video, okay? So just make sure you get it in on time. Also, there will be one final webinar tomorrow, and it'll dive a little bit more into strategic analysis and what to do to further develop your idea once you've got it off the ground. So right down there at the bottom, you can see the tiny URL, and we also do have this on our LinkedIn, on Teams. So if you haven't registered yet, please do, because it's going to be a great one and you're not going to want to miss it. Again, my name is Alexis Jean-Jacquet. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Victoria to wrap up the rest of the webinar.
Well, thank you very much, Alexis. It was a great session today, and thank you to our panel participants as well. Like Alexis said, don't forget about us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, and don't forget to check out HFTP for students. Join as a student member. We hooked a new member today who joined while online on our session, and we would love to welcome you too. Thank you again as we close today's hackathon presentation. See you tomorrow.
Yes.
Bye.